afternoon, and I would like to thank each and every one of you for joining. I am Dr. Danny, the Executive Director for the Women's Business Center of Richmond. And today we're going to talk a little bit about intellectual property. What does that mean? And some of the elements that small businesses oftentimes may not think about, but definitely is in need of that expertise and knowledge. And we're hoping that we will share something that will impact you and your business perspective as it relates to protecting your brand and protecting those things that are unique to your success as a business owner. Your mind that you want to stop, please stop me at any time, but we're going to move forward in the presentation. So these are just a few fast facts. I put them in there to stimulate conversation, but it's also that, most people don't know that, it's very costly if you have something that is unique and of value, not to do something with it. And if you don't document it, you stand a risk of losing it. Anyone who's had children and they haven't learned to tie their shoes yet, and you decide to get them little sneakers with Velcro on it, the individual who discovered that as a means to apply to a shoe to bypass shoestrings, that individual made no money off of that technology because they didn't patent it. Similarly, I'm reminded of the song, I think it was, I can't think of the name of that group, but it's I Got That Boom Boom Pow, the chicks be rocking my style. There was a cheerleader in California who had came up with that little phrase, that little catchphrase. And there was a band, the Black Eyed Peas, I think it was. And they heard it.
Yes.
It wasn't copyright written. It wasn't, she did nothing to protect that. It was very powerful. And because there have been performances and there have been areas where I guess the cheerleader had an opportunity to go back and say prior art, she had definitely did that, and there was a huge lawsuit about it. I think the cheerleader might have came out on top years later, but I'm not real sure. But I put those out there that it's not just, the better mousetrap that you might build. Intellectual property is really anything that distinguishes you and or your product, that you can claim your rights to, that if anyone wants to use it, they need to license it from you, or you should be deriving royalties from it. You might also remember there was a song by Pharrell and I want to say Robin Thicke. And when the song would come on, you would just hear a little bit of it and it sounded just like Marvin Gaye. And I don't know if that lawsuit has been settled yet, but those things come to mind when I think about intellectual property. So creatives have to be mindful of it. Business owners have to be mindful of it. Recently, we had a training class as an element of becoming your own CEO. And there was a lady who has, I think it's called Miss Lizzie's, and it has to do with some cookies or something like that. And she didn't trademark her name. And when she went to do it, she found that someone else already was using it. Neither of them have it trademarked, but if she was to try to trademark it, she may get it through because there was not a trademark on it. But the other person could come back and say, I have prior art. I was using this 2 years before she started her business. So in any regard, it pays to be mindful. And it's not a surprise that, our not necessarily neighboring country to the west, but China tends to be the largest place where goods and services are pirated, whether it's a pocketbook, a look-alike. If you go to New York, all of us know. But all of those things can be very costly if you fail to protect yourself. And even when you do, all that puts you in a position is that you can make a claim or file a lawsuit. So let's delve down a little bit. I do see something in the chat. Is there a question? Oh, okay, cool. Thank you for doing that, Shara. Definitely feel free if you want to raise your hand or type a question in the chat, stop me along the way. It's a small enough group that we can be fairly interactive. So the basics of intellectual property helps us to know, and it's bigger than just the items that you see here. You know, copyrights help to protect you when you have written something. You know, even the gentleman, I want to say he has a trademark, that signature sound where he says, "Let's get ready to rumble." So if someone was to use that as a part of a campaign or something publicly, if it had anything to do with, you know, that sound said that way, he would have a claim against them. So, you know, when we use little, like the music that you heard playing when you came on, I got written permission from the artist to use that in some of my presentations. So trademarks really have to do with those symbols, phrases, logos, trade secrets. So one of the things that a lot of people may not be aware of is that Coca-Cola, they don't have a patent or copyright or trademark when it comes to the formula for their Coke, but it is a trade secret. And so what that means is they don't have to disclose all of that in there, but it is written somewhere, it is documented, but it is not public. You know, patents, copyrights, trademarks, those are public things. But this trade secrets are things that the company holds confidential and believes that it's too valuable for them to disclose to anyone. And then the government, the United States government, makes a right for them to have it as a trade secret. Some people may not know, patents are awarded to inventors, but after 20 years, the patent is rendered free so that anyone can implement that. So you have about 20 years to make as much money as you can off of a patent, and then other people can use that technology. You find that a lot in pharmaceuticals and things of that nature. So after a drug has been in the market for about 20 years, you'll find others will come, and there may be some trade secret elements, so they don't know everything, inert materials, they'll swap them out, and that's when you hear this idea of generic versions of different drugs. If you have any questions about any of those elements that we just talked about, copyrights, trademarks, trade secrets, we're going to go a little bit deeper into this idea. Does anyone have any idea how much the Coca-Cola brand is worth? It's probably somewhere along the lines of $69 billion that brand. And so we'll talk a little bit about what does that mean as we begin to go into the discussion about brands and brand awareness. So we know that our image, we know that if we have a designed company logo, a tagline, as I mentioned before, "Let's get ready to rumble," a particular color, all of those things come together when you form a business to represent your brand. It's very popular now that people talk about personal brands, how they dress, the type of events they attend, you know, the presence, or, you know, when they speak, they may have a catchphrase, excuse me. But, you know, so name, brand promise, brand value. If you're not familiar with those things, it's important to try to understand them. Many of them have an intangible value. That means it's not, it's hard to quantify. It's not like the Coca-Cola brand. They've tested it, they've looked at it, they put the same drink in a different container and sold it. And people are like, nah, that's fake, I don't like it. But just on site, seeing a red and white can with Coca-Cola on it gives them an opportunity to charge a premium for it. So one of the things that I looked at, or one of the case studies was, you know, I don't know if they do it so much now, but during warmer months of the year, Coca-Cola would increase the price of their Coca-Cola and people would still buy it because it was associated with a refreshing drink that made you, took some of the heat out of the day. And when it's hot in the summer, your brain goes to, I need a Coke. So understanding how those things bring value to your company is very important. My personal company is called Sajis Consulting, and I was very intentional about the choice of the name. I wanted something that spoke to a universality of what I did, and so choosing a foreign word meant something to me because that's, again, the English language is one thing. So Sagis is a French word, and it represented something that I wanted to, again, be intentional about it, what it communicates when someone understands what the translated word is. And it means wisdom. Why is that important? Well, if you're going to be consulting for people and they're going to be expecting you to help them unlock value for their company, their product, or their brand, you're going to be giving advice. And so you want it to be wise advice, even to the point where there's things that I do on a spiritual level, and this idea of wisdom, with all you're getting, get understanding. And so, but it's not just stopping there at the name Sagis. The first 4 letters spell out sage. And those of us from, if we cook or if we've grown up, we've thought about, we have some older people in our life, we hear about sage wisdom, sage advice. Sage, of course, is a seasoning. It makes things richer. It brings out, it adds to, but it also stands for SAGE, strategic advisors, gurus, and executives. And so again, it gave a sense or a flavor of what we were about, but it also formed a connection to things that people may be familiar with that helps to build trust. And so again, everything that you do communicates. And even if you don't think it communicates and you don't have a meaning behind it, people will assign a meaning and a value. So that's what we talk about when we think about brand. Or again, any questions, please don't hesitate to raise a hand or to put it in the chat. So what are different classifications of a brand? You can have this idea of a descriptive brand. If it does something like fresh look, that's kind of descriptive. It is assigned to, when I think about it, I know there are contact brands called Fresh Look. So it's giving you something, and it's their brand of colored contacts. So that's an example of a descriptive brand. Personal based brands, Paris Hilton, her fragrance. So it's assigned to her persona, and people who want to be about that life that she's about, they may just on brand alone, maybe not, the fragrance may not even be that good, but then they'll drive to that. Associative brands. When you think about associative brands, I think about, Corvettes and Porsches. It's something about them that communicates speed or fast, or some people may think of luxury. And so you have certain brands that fit into that category. You think about like the Moose Crunch stuff that you can buy during holidays, or you can buy anything, anytime, from Harry and, I don't know if it's Harry and David or somebody, but those are associated with Wisconsin. There, certain cheeses that are associated with them. And then, alphanumeric brands. When I think about that, I think about 3M. Do we really know what the 3 M's are? Or what we know that it is associated with these, you know, little pads that we get that, I guess you can't see it too good, but the little sticky, the little Post-its. Of course, they do a lot of other things. They make the masks, you know, the N95 masks that everyone's trying to get their hands on. But that's just an idea of different brand classifications. So I want to touch a little bit on something that all business owners do think about these days, and that is having a digital presence. We have a digital presence on our websites, all of our social media, and we are conscious about that. Just like with the Women's Business Center of Richmond, we have our socials locked down around the WBC Richmond, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, and or Twitter. Haven't gotten to TikTok yet, but we're coming. But anyway, we think about those things, but who built your website? Do you know whether or not you own it? The way it's laid out. They may be using elements. You may have trademarked your logo, but any content that you put on there, the domain name, do you own it or are you renting it? Some people might remember several years ago, maybe it's not several, maybe a couple of decades ago, when Prince had a huge falling out with his record label. And so a lot of musical creatives have to be mindful when they sign agreements. It's not just how many records or how many albums they might be committed to or releases with them, but it's also who owns their imagery. Prince didn't own his name. And so when he broke away from that label, he had to go to like some symbols or something. I can't remember. He did some things with Third Eye and all of that. But at the end of the day, it's a lesson that is hard learned. You may not see value on it today, but you need to be mindful on that tomorrow it may be worth something. So it's cheaper to lock it down now than to have to figure it out later. A lot of things we don't think about when we're invited to do keynotes or be on panels or things of that nature. Or if we invite people into our venue, what kinds of agreements are you getting people to sign? Do they give you a release? Are you giving a release for them to use your photo? Are you giving them a release to replay that content? Those are things you have to think about when it comes to your intellectual property or elements of your brand. Who really owns it? Again, I want to go a little bit further into copyright, just because I think one of the aspects of what we really try to do with the Women's Business Center is to not just give you information, but to give you information that you can act upon. And so knowing that there are attorneys and there are a lot of other ways that you can do some of these things, we've chosen to put some information in here that will help you know that you don't always have to get a professional for some basic things. If you have your information, let's say, I've written a couple of books and I self-published. And in doing that, I purchased my own ISBN numbers, which you can do online. I've developed my own account with the Copyright Office in DC. And then you can go in and upload your original work and it will give you your copyright certificate over time once they verify you haven't plagiarized anything. But the point is, some of these things can be as low as $50. Depending upon, I think it's like $45 for an individual work. But you can also upload several works at one time, and that's a different rate, but it's cheaper than if you do each one individually. This is something that I have a couple of creatives in my family. One is a writer, one is a musician. And, the fact that I had done that with my works, that they were immediately, when they started to put things out on, Facebook, or they were actually putting in essays and things like that, they always got a copyright to their work. And so again, it's something to know. It's not expensive and you can do it all electronically. So things are moving ahead in that regard. Trademarks, again, it's a proprietary protection for you and it doesn't wear out as long as you've gone about it the right way and you filed it with the government and you paid your fees. Now, can it be more expensive than $250? It can, but for simple things that relate to your brand and or your products or however you see it, you can trademark those things. You may trademark the way you sign your name if you are, an artist. You may want to trademark the insignia that goes on your paintings. You may, of course, trademark a book or any writing that you choose to publish, a poem that you do out there. But as a business owner, some of the things that we think about trademarking is our name. We think of trademarking our logo. And those are things that I think at a bare minimum should be included in your marketing budget when you have your business. And if you haven't done it, now, I recently talked to a young lady who has a very successful business. She's been in operation for over 2 decades, and her business name is fairly common. And her feedback was it was useless for her to try to copyright that. She had to focus on her business brand of value of, and her customer relationships as a means of making sure that when someone spoke the name of her company, they would associate it with the quality of work she did and not just who she was and where she was from a trademark standpoint. Because if your name is, colors are bright, well, you're going to see that everywhere. So you might want to be mindful about having some uniqueness to things that you trademark. And if it's too general, you will not be awarded that trademark. Let's talk a little bit about patents. So from that standpoint, I think the most important thing is document everything when it comes to a patent. If you have an idea, I had a good friend who gave me some sage advice one time. He said, Danny, just as soon as you have an idea, just make a PowerPoint of it or write a Word document that overviews it. Make sure you can email it to yourself, or you can just, some people call it a poor man's idea keeper, but they'll seal it in an envelope and mail it to themselves because it'll have a stamped envelope, a postage stamp date on it so that you can claim it right then, even if you do nothing with it. And so one of the first ideas that I had when I was in college, that before I thought about this idea of any great idea I have that I haven't seen anyone with it yet, I wanted to mark it in time. Most of us who are focused on patents, we have what's called a patent journal. And it's a scientific notebook. It's specifically, it's not just a tablet or something, but it's a bound notebook and it's set up for people who have creative ideas and you want to record those, date those, and even keep an electronic version of it. But it had to do with this radio. And I couldn't understand because I'm dating myself, but it was back in the day where you had cassette players in your car. And I was always upset that when you wanted to hear a song over again on the cassette radio, even if you had the technology that you could hit for replay, it still had to rewind it. And so for that minute or so that it was rewinding, I was like, why doesn't it play the radio? And about 6 years later, it was like something that was standard on cars. If you had a cassette radio and you were playing the cassette and you stopped the cassette to rewind it, the radio would just play until it got to the point, then the radio would shut down and it would play the song you wanted to hear. But that's not anything I did something with. But later in life, all of those other little ideas, I started to do that. A couple of times I've had patent ideas that I have submitted. I have a couple of patents that are more on the engineering technology side that were collaborations with other people. But nevertheless, if you have great ideas, make sure you document them. And then, you don't want to learn too much. And even though it says do a patent search, this idea is that you can, as an inventor, you can become exposed to other people's ideas if you do too much searching. And so it's called plausible deniability. You don't want to have someone question you about an infringement, and then you have to say, yes, I do know about that patent. So most people will hire someone to do a patent search for them. And when I was in graduate school, I worked for a law firm on the side where I would they would give me a topic, and I had to go and do research on that topic based on other patents or papers that had been published or speeches that had been given. And I would write up a synopsis covering that. I didn't know who they were working for, but I provided them that report. And that kept the inventor separated from that patent search. Prototypes. I remember there was a young lady in Texas, her family, and she went to our church. And I remember that she had an idea, or her family had an idea. Both of her parents were, I think, had engineering backgrounds, and we knew each other through the National Society of Black Engineers. And this young lady had an idea to, she wanted to do something unique with lemonade. And she had a process that she was doing, and she needed a different kind of lemonade, I don't know, container for extracting what she needed for her process. And another good friend of their family, he helped them get connected with, I want to say it was Alibaba. You may be familiar with them. I think they're an Asian type wholesale house, a little bit like Amazon, but a little bit different. It's like a blend between Amazon, eBay, and Fiverr, right? You can identify people who will build your prototype for you. And so she built a prototype, and she used to go into these business plan competitions, and she shared her lemonade. And now this young lady is a multimillionaire. You may have heard about her product. I think it's called Me and the Bees now. When it first started out, it was Bees Lemonade. But anyway, that's just an idea that sometimes you want a prototype, but you do not need a prototype in order to get a patent. It just adds to your patent claims. And then, of course, it's not as inexpensive as getting a trademark, but if it's an idea that you could potentially license, or you could go into manufacturing yourself, it is in your advantage to look at whether or not you want to file a provisional patent. And usually that's the point at which you want to engage an attorney. And that attorney is going, well, you should have maybe at the search side of it, but that's when you start to come together and start to understand the potential value of what you're doing, and you get your patent awarded. It does take a while. I think even though you can do it for around $2,500 on average, to file a patent is probably around $5,000. And again, I mentioned before, a patent generally expires within 20 years after you filed it, but you don't have to have completely original stuff. You can actually improve upon someone's idea, and that's patentable. And so, just looking more broadly and trying to tie this idea together about what does it mean for you as a business owner and your ability to be able to take advantage of your brand, of your IP. There are things that will move people to buy your products because of who you are. There are elements that would allow you to develop contracts and product ideas that involve hardware and software. All of those are your economic value add. So I remember when I was getting ready to start my company, I have a good friend who's a venture capitalist, and he just said, okay, so let's think about how you're going to fund your business. What economic value add do you bring? What IP or intellectual property is a part of your company, whether you are there or not? If your company's value is totally dependent on you as an individual, chances are you're not going to be able to get VC money, because they want to know that if you're out of the picture, there's still value that is assigned to whatever it is, your process, your product. And so economic value add is very, very dependent upon how you are evaluated. Now, you may get angel funders. Those are people who are usually close to you, who believe in you, and then they want to help you be successful. But venture capitalists are strictly there to make money off of you. And if they give you money, they want a return on investment. And God forbid they give you money and 2 years later you're gone, you fall off, you pass away, I don't know. But they want to know that there's still going to be value in this entity that they are investing in. And the brand value associated, the brand promise associated with products and things of the like are ways for them to quantify what is your true economic value add. I hope that I'm not boring you guys. I would have loved to have had some questions by now, but we're going to keep pressing forward. Again, rolling all of this up, if you can build loyalty, people want your product. They want, there's a lot of people out there selling cookies. There's a lot of people out there selling coffee. Why is it that Starbucks is able to charge at least 2 times what most of them are charging, and people still will pay for it? So loyalty and visibility of your brand have something to do with it. It's been said that about $50 million can build a national brand. That means it's on your lips. I'll give you an example. Most people on this session today have probably not even heard of Lidl 2.5 years ago, maybe 3, maybe shorter than that. But it seems like they are popping up everywhere. So having a visible brand oftentimes will cause people to wonder, wow, they're everywhere. They must be good. And so all of a sudden you get foot traffic to your property or to what you're doing simply because it's extremely visible or associated with something that is considered to be important. If you think about 25th Street Market in the East End of our city, if you're in the Richmond area, it doesn't have a name that is associated with any of the larger grocery store brands, but it's building its brand as a community good, as something that non-sibby, not for self. But the prices in that place are unbelievable. But it's trying to benefit from the association of being somewhere all by itself, but yet bringing value that's bigger than just their presence. People feel good about it, even when they're paying more than what something probably should be paid for. It's like, oh, well, they're giving back to the community. So they are associating themselves with something, but they are truly for profit. Just an idea. This idea that you can be tactical or you can be strategic, but what is it that makes one from the other? A tactical response when it comes to IP is going to be more reactive. You're trying to defend your brand. Something that is more strategic is when you think about it, longer term than where you are today, and you begin to think, how do I leverage what I'm building, either the quality, the perceived value, or I want to do something totally different like Apple did. I mean, none of us knew that we needed to have a small, battery-powered, handheld, powerful computer in our hands. But Apple said, we're going to drive people to that based on visibility, status, association, and we'll get the early adopters, people who love technology just because they love it. And if the influencers start to like it, everybody is going to like it. And that's a bet that they made. And then what happens after that? Now you have a competition for eyeballs. I no longer have to focus on you watching television to market to you about my product and or service. So now you have applications and ads and things that come right into your hand that you're looking at all the time. It's been said that people notice much quicker when they leave their phone versus when they leave their purse or their wallet. And so that tells you that there is some business drivers associated with the intellectual property that you define. But it also improves your competitiveness, right? So if you do things first, or you do things better, and that becomes a property that is associated with your products, your brand, and or your business, that is something that you can take with you. It's worth something. So that's why when people sell their business, maybe they have a janitorial service and they've built a reputation of doing excellent work at a competitive price and reliable. Well, when they sell that business, that book of business may run, maybe they're doing $1 million a year. But when they get ready to sell that business, you can best believe they're going to sell it for more than $1 million, because there is, there is value associated with the brand that exceeds the revenue it derives. So it puts a person who's buying that business in a more lucrative business because they have a customer base already. Now they have to use their own innovation to continue to grow it. So competitiveness is another reason. Before we break for questions, I'm going to hit real quickly a couple of documents that you should have in your portfolio. And I'm not going to read the slides, but what I will tell you is that, anywhere you're talking about an idea, you haven't patented, you have not copywritten it. Anytime you are sharing some information with anyone else, and I dare say it can even be in a family, but anytime you're sharing something that you think is valuable to the company you're getting ready to launch, or a new product you're going to bring out, any of those things, you should have the individuals that you're sharing it with sign a non-disclosure agreement. It's just what it says. They're saying, I agree that you are sharing confidential information with me that I cannot share with anyone else. So that's as simple as I can make it. A non-disclosure agreement can be 1 page, 3 pages, or 10 pages. But I recommend that you always have a simple non-disclosure agreement, because everything starts out good. But me and a business partner had a pitch to a company at one point, and we wanted to hire a project manager who was going to help us execute the proposal. And we shared it with her because she needed to know what was going to be going on and what her role would be. But we were the business owners and we were the individuals trying to win a contract. Well, we talked to her, we didn't do anything with it. Time went by, and probably maybe 3 or 4 months later, we saw that individual, because we were at one company and she wasn't a part of the company, but she was in a conference room, and I walked past it and saw her, and I called my friend. I was like, did you know that so-and-so was here? She was pitching our business idea to our own company. So again, you always want to make sure that you protect yourself, and it's not hard. All you need to do is have a non-disclosure. I would even get it notarized, but both individuals sign it saying they understand that confidential information is being shared. Not unlike that is when you engage with people in business. Sometimes before you get to a contractual agreement, let's say you have a friend who bakes cookies and they're going to sell cookies, and you do lemonade and you're going to sell lemonade. And you realize that if we work together, we could probably have a competitive offering in these hot summers or whatever. And we're going to have these nice little stands that we're going to roll around in parks, and we're going to make money. Well, before you even get to a contractual agreement, you might want to first have your NDA. You have your conversation. Then we say, oh, okay, well, this is what you do, this is what I do, and this is how it might work together. To go a step further to say, well, what might it look like if we can, collaborate? Before you get to a contract, you might have a memorandum of understanding or memorandum of agreement that documents how your 2 businesses or 3 businesses or whatever might work together. It gives terms and conditions associated with the expectation. It identifies the benefits that are going to be transacted, who benefits how, and you may operate under that MOU for a short period of time until you can get the contractual agreement in place that fully has a statement of work. It probably includes how you're going to share profits and things like that. Before you get to those conversations, I encourage you to be familiar with the memorandum of understanding or agreement. And again, it can be 1 page or 2 or 20, but keep it simple, but try and protect your ideas and your relationships. And that really is the sum total of our presentation today. Again, I hope that it was beneficial to you, that you got something out of it. At this time, if there are anyone who has any questions, any comments or observations, we would definitely love to share with you.